This entire military is one cohesive, dedicated force. And the threats to our nations, they don't sleep. They're watching our every move. Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. They may be watching this right now. Our military should not be mistaken for a cable news gabfest show. We don't care what you look like. We don't care who you voted for, who you worship, what you worship, who you love. It doesn't matter if your dad left you millions when he died or if you knew who your father was. We have been honed into a machine of lethal moving parts that you would be wise to avoid if you know what's good for you. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down. We don't want war. But if you want war with the United States of America, there's one thing I can promise you, so help me God. Someone else will raise your sons and daughters.
Military Broadcast Radio, the station that's giving veterans a voice.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Welcome to the From Pain to Purpose radio show. I'm your host, Eva Fulton. In this show, we explore the incredible journeys of resilience, healing, and transformation. In each episode, we will sit down with individuals who have faced unimaginable struggles and turned their pain into power, heartbreak into hope, and their challenges into meaningful change and finding new purpose in life. Through candid conversations and inspiring stories, we will uncover how pain, whether emotional, physical, mental, or spiritual, can be the catalyst for profound growth and a deeper sense of purpose. So if you are looking for motivation, insight, and real stories of triumph over adversity, you're in the right place. Let's get started on this journey from pain to purpose. Let's give veterans a voice through Military Broadcast Talk. Hey, good afternoon. Happy Saturday. It is Pie Saturday, right? You know, it's the March 14th, the year of our Lord, 2026. And, it's Pi Day, 3/14. I'm in my birthday week, folks. And a year ago, I was headed on a jet plane to Spain. And I have decided this week I am going to make it. If I can make it an annual trip, I will make it annual. Maybe it'll be biannual, or I'll figure out some other place to go. But I miss going on these neat journeys. So I'm really excited about the guest we have today. I've been doing some, side research on expats for several years. I came across this whole concept of expats after the military when I was working for Lucent and Avaya. I was part of a team that would do, the flat file data, to do the acquisitions and mergers. And then I saw this term expats. I was like, what's an expat? And I was like, oh, wow, who knew there was such a thing? So it's been kind of interesting that I'm really excited to be able to have my guest on this week and really explore this concept of expats. I've seen articles where there are people who live on cruise boats. And why not? You've got food provided, there's laundry services, there's medical. And, we think that there's always this construct that we can only live in America, and not, obviously I'm very patriotic and love America, but I also love traveling. Maybe that's just something that's been bred in my blood, if you will, to get out there and explore and know that, man, there's some neat places out there. Part of my travel experiences have gone from Belize to the Bahamas, Mexico several times. I've been to Spain twice now. And when I was in the military, Germany, France, let's see, I was married in Denmark. Trying to think of where else I went. Oh, a little blip into Austria, and then where's another place that I dove? I did scuba diving in Cayman Brac. So I love traveling, love traveling, and I couldn't think of a better way to, kick off birthday week than to, see what else is out there, see where else we can explore. But I saw this guy, our guest tonight is John Davis. I saw him post something on Instagram and I reached out, I follow people for a while and I'm like, man, that's pretty cool because he's filling a need and we always are trying to find what's a pain to purpose story, and I'm so excited to see what what journeys John has been doing, where he's at now, and see if that inspires somebody to be able to do, a new version of them, because I think in some ways us as military veterans, we're trying to navigate whatever that new us is, right? Because it's a new normal. Well, what does that mean? How do we figure that out? And maybe we just need to embrace the ideas of exploring what those other options look like. So, welcome.
The interview of the week is brought to you by Jersey Mike's, a sub above.
Hey, John, welcome to the From Pain to Purpose radio show on Military Broadcast Radio, giving veterans a voice.
Hey, Eva, thanks for giving me a voice. And I'm excited to talk about veterans and travel and living abroad, because for me, it has been such an amazing, incredible experience that I've been on a mission to share that with other veterans who might be interested on how living abroad as a veteran expat works.
How did you even get started doing this?
Well, I took a vacation and then just didn't get on the return flight is kind of what happened. Because I discovered initially that my first apartment was in the Dominican Republic and I could rent an apartment for $500 a month. At the time, I already had my military retirement. I was already receiving VA benefits, and I figured out that I could get a better quality health care as a veteran outside the United States using the foreign medical program. I could live a higher quality life. I could have a maid. I could scuba dive every day. Like you said, I could live in beautiful weather, and I could do it at a fraction of the cost of the country that I fought and sacrificed for. So I started kind of telling that story a little bit, and I was surprised how much it blew up, because veterans, like you kind of talked about in your intro, are travelers, are
Yeah.
independent, are interested in adventure. So we actually make the perfect expats. So I had been on a mission for the past 6 years to talk to veterans about moving and living abroad with your military benefits. So I have an organization of veterans called Veterans in Paradise, and we have events around the world. We provide information and resources for veterans who might be interested in exploring a better life at half the cost.
Wow. So where are you signing on to the show right now?
I am currently in Korea, so it's 5 in the morning here. I don't know what time it is there for you,
God bless
but
you for
I
getting up
am
so early. Oh, it's 4 in the afternoon.
uh my time zones are all messed up because I just flew in here a few days ago. So they this is the anniversary of the Korean War, so they have some cool
Yeah.
Korean War displays here. So I've kind of been looking around, seeing the sights, and when I leave here, I'm on my way over to Thailand to meet with the veterans of foreign wars and American Legion and explore how veterans get their health care living in Thailand, because there's a ton of veterans in Thailand and the Philippines. Southeast Asia has always been a big veteran expat destination since the Vietnam War. So I'll be doing some articles and content over there about how veterans are living and using their benefits in that region of the world.
That'll be interesting because, I have a documentary the lady that was in the show with me in the documentary, she's from Guam.
Mhm,
I know that there are a lot of veterans who were originally from Guam
mhm.
as well.
And Guam is a territory, so you can actually use your VA home loan to buy a house over in Guam, and they have some better resources for veterans like the VA there and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I do, is provide information for veterans, because a lot of us don't know that you could receive your military benefits and your health care outside the United States. I remember like one of the first kind of videos I did on Instagram that kind of got popular. It was really just me on a boat with a bunch of pretty women. And I said it was during COVID. And I like kind of made some funny comments about, hey, America is like burning itself to the ground, and I'm just on a boat in the Dominican Republic. And a lot of the guys I deployed with were like, wait, what's going on? You live in the Dominican Republic? And I'm like, yeah. And I kind of started explaining it. And I had already been a writer. I'd already written books and had a blog. So I put up an article about being a veteran living abroad in the Dominican Republic. And I kind of just laid out the information, hey, you can rent an apartment for this much. This is the immigration process. This is how you get your health care paid for by the VA with nothing out of pocket. And it kind of blew up. And now we have 15,000 American veterans that live in the Dominican Republic. That's kind of where I'm based out of. And I travel
Wow.
from there. So a lot of veterans, for like my mother's generation, for example, the dream was kind of to retire in Florida. Like that was what people wanted to do. But now that's kind of too expensive for your average middle class American.
Oh,
But as a
sure.
foreigner, you don't know, but you can actually own property in the Dominican Republic. You can own property in Costa Rica. You can own property in Mexico. You can own property in Panama. You can do all these things. So I'm kind of letting veterans know about those resources outside the United States, so we can heal and live the lives we want. Because I think there is an aspect of it that's important, and that is the financial health aspect, because financial health is mental health. And so many veterans are just struggling in survival mode financially in the United States. But if you go somewhere, especially if you're on a fixed income, where your money goes 3 times as far, then your life kind of gets 3 times better. So there's an important aspect of the financial side, but for me, it's kind of always been about the mental health aspect of it, because I really healed when I kind of separated myself from the United States, when my nervous system calmed down. Of course, I'm spending more time in nature. I'm going to the beach every day. I have coconuts in my backyard. So I'm in a much more like healing and positive environment. And we all know there are some issues going on in the United States when it comes to
Yeah.
different things.
I bet part of it is even just you're walking around barefoot and you're getting grounded,
Yep,
and
that's a
the
big aspect
green
too.
energy and not all of the structures that we have, the concrete that we have in America.
You're much more connected to nature, and nature is so
Yeah.
healing for veterans. And Americans spend 90% of our time indoors. And when you move abroad, most of the world, especially in areas with warmer climates, you spend the majority of your time outside. Also, there's
And
certain
the
aspects like
sun.
with the sun is very
Yeah.
healing, nature is very healing, being outside and having community is also very healing. In the United States, we've kind of had kind of a decline of our everyday communities, churches, parks, malls, all those types of things. And abroad, it's not really like that. When it comes to, my life in the Dominican Republic or wherever I'm at, for Dominican Republic, people really care about God, family, and community. And those are three of the most important things to them. And so for veterans, you kind of fit right into that kind of like framework, to where we're personable people. We like being outside. We like taking care of each other. So that kind of more fits with living abroad, I think, than the United States.
I think there are several questions that I have gurgling in my head. How did you decide on Dominican Republic?
So they were the only country that were accepting tourists during COVID. So they never shut
Really?
down during, yeah, they never shut down during COVID. I had my first living abroad experience was in Thailand. I was teaching English there after I medically retired from the military. And I came back to the United States to do my master's at Harvard in education. And I was going to school there, and COVID kicked off. So I had to get the hell out of Boston because I was just there for school, and they shut down the bars, they shut down the gyms. I didn't know what else to do because drinking and working out are like my only hobbies. So I booked a ticket to the Dominican Republic and just stayed there. And it's a very military friendly country. We have a lot of veteran healthcare options for us there. It's safe. You have the beaches. You also have close proximity to the United States. So when I talk about the best countries for veterans, the Dominican Republic is always like in the top 5 best countries for veterans outside the United States.
Did you transfer your VA to, is there like I don't understand how to, did you keep is your home VA still back in the States? And how do you
So
manage that VA care?
Right. So here's how the VA works for veterans outside the United States that are service connected like I am. So you use what's called the Foreign Medical Program of the Veterans Administration. So in the Dominican Republic, we have clinics set up that are exclusively for veterans. So I go to a veteran clinic in the Dominican Republic, and the best way to think of it is kind of like community care but overseas. So I
Okay.
go to the clinic, I get health care, they send the bill for my health care to the VA, and the VA will pay the private clinic in the Dominican Republic. So there's nothing out of pocket for me, and I have no wait times for appointments. And I've been the veteran where I was really struggling with my mental health when I was getting out of the military, and I called the VA, and it took me weeks and weeks to see a therapist, weeks and weeks to get decent treatment. And for veterans abroad, you often encounter a higher class of treatment. Some of that's because it's private care, but also we have these exclusive clinics for veterans, only for veterans in the Dominican Republic, in Colombia, and in Thailand. And those are the only three countries where these types of clinics exist. But you can get your health care, at least your service-connected health care as a veteran, anywhere in the world. And there are many providers that will direct bill the Veterans Administration, and some you have to pay up front, like TRICARE, and then get reimbursed.
Right. That's
And then
interesting.
there's
You know,
the other aspect is healthcare is so much cheaper outside the United States, which I think is very important to point out, to where I can walk to a pharmacy pretty much anywhere in the world and get whatever drugs or medications I would need without a prescription over the counter at a fraction of the cost in the United States.
I think it's
So
why a
that's
lot of
also,
people, you know, when they go on cruises, they do that in Mexico at the ports.
yep,
They go to the
yep,
pharmacies and, you know, they can get a lot of the prescription meds there. My daughter had an illness several years ago, and the doctor told us straight up, sorry, you can either go to Mexico and get the medicine that your daughter needs, or Canada, you know.
right.
And
Which is not what you want to hear, but unfortunately,
right.
it's
We don't
reality.
offer it in the States. It's like, wow,
Right.
really? You know, but my daughter ended up doing something different. So uh, that's interesting, you know, because I'm 100% permanent and total as well.
Hmm.
So I'm probably your mother's age.
Well,
but,
yeah,
but,
we're both veterans. We're the same, but yeah, I
yeah, we
understand that.
are.
But now there's, there's new generations of veterans, and one thing we have to do is support each other across the generational divide. So, like when I go, for example, in a couple days, I'm meeting with the VFW in Thailand. It's mainly older guys, and I view
Yeah.
myself as kind of being a bridge between like their generation of veterans and my generation of veterans, especially in today's world, because it's actually easier to move and live abroad than ever before, especially if you have military benefits. So many people work online or work remotely or do what they need to do online. So it's easier than ever to move and really thrive abroad. And even if it's not like a permanent thing, I think travel is very healthy for veterans as well.
Oh,
It's
I
really an
definitely,
adventure. It's it's
I
mind opening, like you were mentioning.
I have it, you know, part of my plan when I retire in a couple of years. I seriously, I have looked at, you know, sell my house or rent it out, sell my truck. So if I don't have an expense like the vehicle and, you know,
Hmm.
insurance and all that stuff, I can go hike the full Camino, go someplace else for a bit of time, come back for another, you know, I could go cruise, I can
Yeah.
do plenty of things for a year or whatever. All of the bills are on auto pay.
Hmm.
You know, you can do so much, I think, electronically to manage making your
Oh,
other
absolutely.
payments, that it gives us the freedom to go do these things.
Yeah, and I want to open veterans' ideas to those ideas of freedom, to the fact like you're talking about. I mean, we tend to kind of put ourselves in our own personal slavery in the United States, to
Yeah.
where we develop these like very expensive lives for ourselves. The more we make, the more we spend. And I think a lot of veterans are kind of tired of like the consumerism, the materialism, and we're the
Yeah.
type of people that actually benefit, we benefit more and we value more experiences more than possessions. Like most of the veterans I know, and that's one thing I tell veterans is like a lot of us don't need much to be happy. I'm very happy in the Dominican Republic with an apartment that costs $500 a month, where I can walk to the beach and I have close knit friends. I can walk to the bar, I can walk to the gym. I can be outside more. I'm very happy living like that. I don't need a big house and a fancy new car and fancy clothes. It's not really who I am. And I think I want to tell veterans about those healing experiences and those travel experiences abroad. Because, like you mentioned, I mean, you don't need to, move abroad. I realize that's kind of like a big step for people, but it's perfectly reasonable to spend your winters in a different location, especially if you're somewhere that's cold in the United States, to go somewhere for the winter, come back, travel around. Because I think as veterans, when we stop traveling, that's when we stop kind of learning and adventuring. Because travel does something that nothing else does. It really wakes your soul up.
Yep. There were a couple of websites that, I don't know if this is the one that you said are you mentioned in this one? We'll have
Yeah, I
to
think
make
that's
sure
an
we
article
share.
of mine in
Is it?
Forbes has my name on there.
This is a Forbes article, Retiring Abroad on a Military Pension, 3 expat havens for veterans.
Hmm.
The first one was Dominican Republic. That's the one that
Yep.
you mentioned. And then the
See if
next
they.
place is the Philippines. That's just
Hmm.
gorgeous. I can't, both of those places look
Oh,
like super scuba diving places. And then
and
Panama
yep,
is another
great
place.
option. And Panama and those countries are also very easy to travel to and live to long term. So, for example, in Panama, all you need to show is that you have a VA pension or military retirement for more than $1,200 a month, and you get a long stay term visa, which is obviously pretty easy. Anyone with the military benefits will qualify for that pension visa to go there. And then you can go there and have high quality life. There's a big veteran community there in Panama. It's easy to get your health care as a veteran in Panama, and you have close proximity to the United States, and it has really good infrastructure and stuff too.
So what's the flight time? I don't even know. Dominican Republic, that's still part
It's the
of,
Caribbean.
yeah, I was trying to geographically.
Yeah,
It's not
you're
far
you're in
from
Miami.
Belize. It's not
Like
far from
you're in Miami
Belize,
in like
right?
two and a
So,
half hours. No, it's not very far
yeah.
from Belize. You're in Miami in like 2 hours, and the Dominican Republic for most of or for half the year is on East Coast time zone. So it's very easy for people or veterans that like work abroad or something like that, or work remotely, I mean, to live in the Dominican Republic, um, and go
I
back to the
could
United
so
States.
do
Really,
that.
really,
Write books
yeah,
easy.
yeah. That's that's what I do.
Go scuba diving. Yeah, I was looking at your what list is this? Man, this is your link
Oh,
tree
I'm
list
yeah.
was
I'm doing a
huge.
lot of stuff. So, and that's one thing that kind of like I started kind of slowly, with just kind of like funny videos, and then I got into the more like serious stuff and actual informative value information, things like that. So I even wrote a book, Veterans in Paradise, which is free for any veteran that wants it. Just hit me up and I'll send you the ebook, or it's available on Amazon because I wanted to lay out the benefits of living abroad as a veteran, not only the actual logistics of it when it comes to healthcare and visas and stuff like
Yeah.
that, but also a little bit about the healing aspect of it. Because I really struggled when I got in the military. I struggled with addiction, I struggled with PTSD, and it kind of opened my eyes to how much our environment shapes our identity and our growth and healing. Because it's very hard to heal in a toxic environment.
Yeah,
And
it is.
especially like in a city, or if you're constantly surrounded by financial pressure and political division and all the kind of BS that's going on in the United States, when you separate yourself from that, it really gives you space to heal and reflect. And like you mentioned, scuba diving, I go scuba diving with a group of veterans like once or twice a week. We all go scuba diving together. We all go out to breakfast. I actually have a program there where veterans get certified to scuba dive super cheap because I think it's an incredible healing thing that you can do. So I want to open veterans' eyes to those types of lifestyles, and that maybe the rat race the isn't necessarily for you, or might not be.
I That sounds incredible. I saw some of the videos that you and some of your buddies posted. Those are nice apartments too. That it is
Oh
not
yeah,
like, some of the ones that you would see in America for $500 a month.
no,
Y'all are
I don't think
yeah.
you could live not in this century in America for $500 a month
No,
anywhere,
it
and
would not
renting.
pass HUD standards.
No, and renting in our country has gotten kind of out of whack to where it's very
Yeah.
expensive to rent. And when you go abroad and you find an apartment I was talking to a female veteran who lives in Thailand. Her apartment rental is $300 a month for a really nice place.
300.
So when you find apartments like that, when you find a lifestyle like that, that affords you to pursue your hobbies, pursue your passions, to do the things that you like to do, it can really be super addicting to veterans. Because for me, the most addicting thing was peace. Because I had medically retired from the military. I had done multiple deployments to the Middle East, and after living for so long, kind of in that high speed, high tempo military environment, when I got out, I needed to just reset, and that was difficult for me to do inside the United States. And when I moved abroad, I kind of discovered that this other whole form of life exists, where you can have more peace and more healing and more balance in your everyday life.
I thought this was interesting. Just even how many Americans, this isn't the numbers for military veterans, but Americans overall. This is the
Oh yeah.
last numbers that were available for 2023. There's
Mhm.
almost 1.2 million Americans living in Mexico. I know a lady
Oh
that
yeah.
just moved her whole family down to Mexico. She's from my high school, and because of the healthcare,
Yeah.
she's got some medical issues, and she can get the care that she needs down there that she can't get up here. And
Hmm.
looking forward to how do you get the help you need, and she's not a veteran, but just even looking for those other options that, it's sad that we have to go. There are veterans who find the need to go in other countries to get that care.
Yeah,
A
and
little
I mean,
over.
there's a healthcare crisis in the United States. There's a cost of living crisis in the United States,
Yeah.
and there's a mental health crisis in the United States. So, we spend the most on our healthcare and yet have the unhealthiest outcomes around the world. We're also kind of more stressed and anxious than the rest of the world is. And a lot of veterans, when they move abroad, they discover, an entirely different way of life. And when people talk about, so the State Department, and nobody really officially tracks how many Americans officially live outside the United States, but it's deep into the millions. I think the last, it's probably 15 to 20 million Americans live outside the United States full time, or at least most of the year. And a huge percentage of them are veterans. Like you're talking about Mexico, there's probably 4 or 5 American Legion posts in Mexico, and it's pretty easy for Americans to get your health care there. It's close proximity to the United States. A lot of people think of like Mexico or other places as being like really dangerous. And sure, some areas are, but some areas in the United States are also very dangerous. Like when I'm in the Dominican Republic, I'm not in their version of like the south side of Chicago or bad areas like that. I'm in their nice areas. I
Right.
have gated
You're not
security.
in
I
the
live in a
ghetto
nice place.
area. You're in
No,
the
why would I do that?
upscale. Yeah. That makes
Because
sense. I
one
think
thing,
that's
I can afford luxury in the Dominican Republic. I cannot afford luxury in the United States. Unfortunately, the military didn't pay me that much. So some of the things that you can get abroad, like the luxury, I have a maid. I couldn't have a maid in the United States. I have
I
a
would love to
driver
have a
driving
maid.
me around. Yeah, nice, right? I can have a cook come over and cook me my meals for the week. You can have that kind of a life overseas. Um, and it's been life changing for me.
So, what do you recommend for somebody just getting started? Travel to those
Mhm.
places and see what.
Yeah, so you want to do a little bit of research on moving abroad and expat life to see if it's for you. Obviously, there are a lot of challenges with it. It's not like I don't want to paint it as some miracle cure for everything, but for me, it
Sure.
did help a lot with my PTSD, my addictions, and having a better financial quality life. Certainly improved every other aspect of my life. So the first thing you want to do is kind of do some research to see where might works for you. Some people already have that kind of in mind as to what country would appeal to them or kind of lifestyle would appeal to them. And that also ties into like your budget. On my blog, I have a lot of articles like tips for veterans moving abroad. And then I have obviously the ebook that I wrote, which I can send to anyone who's interested, which is going to lay out kind of your start to finish on your moving abroad experience. But the most important aspect, the most important like box to check is definitely like you mentioned, doing what I call trial run, where you go to a country, like if you want to go to Mexico and live there for like at least a month and do kind of more normal everyday experiences. A lot of people go to Mexico and they'll go to some resort in like Cancun and be like, I want to live here. But every day is not like a resort. Obviously, you can't live at the
Yeah.
buffet and sit in a bar all day. If you do, that's pretty unhealthy. So it's good to go there and kind of live a more normal everyday life, do your laundry, go to a grocery store, take public transportation, and see if it's for you. I think veterans often fit to expat life kind of like a glove because we're used to blending in and being around different cultures. We've already, integrated ourselves into military culture. We've traveled a lot. No, in no military career are you sitting still. You're always going to be
Right.
going places. You're always going to be doing things, and that kind of new experiences are what shape the military are what shape your military identity. And for me, moving abroad and traveling has kind of kept that adventure going. And for me, I'll admit it's way easier. I have no wife, no kids, no pets, no problems. So like me moving abroad is like an easier experience than most people. But I was surprised because when I started talking about moving and living abroad, I really thought it would be primarily, single guys like me. And that's still what it is. But I've been surprised at how many families are interested in moving abroad and asking me questions about international education for families abroad. How
Yeah.
many female veterans are interested in moving abroad? How many dual military couples are interested in moving abroad? I talked to a few dual military couples this last week, and if you are two dual military couples with like 100% benefits, you could live an incredible life overseas.
Oh,
You
I
can,
bet.
I mean, with that much income, you can really have a terrific luxury-filled type life in another country. So talking to veterans kind of about the information and it connected them with resources has been really rewarding for me as well. Like a lot, I don't have a business with any of this stuff. It's just kind of for fun and because I like to travel and write. Obviously, people buy my books a lot, but I also give them away for free when it comes to this because I am the only person in the world that I know of that does this, that talks to veterans about moving and living abroad and talks about different countries because there's so many veterans that talk about like leadership or whatever, but as
Right.
far as like, oh, how do you thrive in Thailand? How do you move to the Dominican Republic? How do you go to Costa Rica? So, like, I remember when I went to Costa Rica, I met with the Marine Corps League there. A lot of people don't know there's a big Marine Corps League in Costa Rica. It's a big expat population. There's an American Legion there in Costa Rica. So I met with them. I went to the healthcare facilities where veterans get their healthcare, and I wrote about it on my blog to kind of lay that information out to people because I think and then I got into the videos because veterans want to see it. Like, we see it, but we want to see it visually to see what it looks like. So that's why I
Yeah.
started doing some of the
I think
social
we have
media videos too,
veterans. We
because
have quite a few veterans in Puerto Rico too.
yeah, yeah,
I
and,
went
and
I
Puerto
went
Rico's
to
a
a
good one.
treat last year where
Hmm.
she and her partner live in Puerto Rico.
Hmm.
Um, I think part of I'm an introverted extrovert. I like my balance of,
Need
quiet
that alone time too.
alone time, but I do have moments where I can prepare for being in, groups. But I think that there's also how do you even though I'm somewhat of that introvert, how do you make prepare for this kind of transition and then go someplace where you don't know anybody? Is the
Hmm.
reliance about joining a veteran service organization going to be some of that conduit to meet people? Or, because I think part of it, even going to the countries, is going to be a language barrier unless
Hmm.
you
In some
are,
places.
I speak better Spanish than what you might think, but I think the more I practice it conversationally, I'd be very, very fluent, rapido. So I think for some people that's going to intimidate them on,
Yeah,
but I don't know the culture, I don't know the language. It's not that they're not considering it, but how do they get over those fears or
yeah.
the perceived obstacles to to s- to dip their toe into doing something like this.
But you mentioned how, you wouldn't speak the language or know the culture, but you didn't speak the military language or know military culture when you went
I
into the
love it.
military.
Yeah.
But you learned it, you picked it up, and that's, got you to where you are today. So that's one reason why we did start, our organization, Veterans in Paradise, to provide resources. And we also have events. We have events in other countries. We did a big Veterans Day event last year in Medellin, Colombia, where we went to different veteran-owned bars. We had like 100 veterans. We went to three veteran-owned bars there in Medellin, Colombia, and then we donated all the money from the alcohol sales to a charity, an orphanage there actually. So I think that the expat community is way more welcoming and open than a lot of people might understand. So if you're thinking about moving abroad, I think it's a good idea to go to places where there are already lots of other expats, because then making friends is easier than you think. And if you're a veteran, it's kind of double easy, because if you go somewhere, you're going to see people in veteran hats. You're going to see events. You're going to see popular expat hangouts. You're going to go to places like dive shops where you're going to meet people. So I think there is an understandable fear about building community abroad, because for veterans, being isolated can be very dangerous. So one of the
Yes.
most important things you do when you move abroad is actually build that community. And that's kind of how we started, is because at first it was just a couple guys going to dinner, because there was a restaurant in Dominican Republic where we were living that had like all you could eat rib night on Thursdays. So like me and like 5 or 6 veterans would go every Thursday night, and before you knew it, it grew to like a group of like 25 to 30 people of retired
Wow.
veterans, retired cops, other expats. And then I started, kind of giving speeches, talking about what we were doing, connecting veterans with resources when it came to like real estate and healthcare. And that kind of birthed, the movement of our Veterans in Paradise thing to where, to kind of what it is and what it's going to be in the future.
So you said that there are more women that are uh, doing this as well. Are
There are
they?
more women than I certainly thought. I am surprised at how many women are doing it. And I think that, female veterans have a tough place in American society. I think that that's fair to say that, you have a tough place in the military, and you have a tough time after the military, kind of adjusting to civilian life. A lot of female veterans obviously deal with trauma during their military service, and then when they get out, they feel a little lost in society. So moving abroad is, I think, one of the purest and most original fresh starts that you could have in your life. And sometimes we all need a fresh start. I mean, I have screwed my life up enough that I have needed maybe 3 or 4 fresh starts. But veterans, I think you need a fresh start at some point in your life to wipe the slate clean. And that's what moving abroad can provide. So I've been surprised at how many females are interested in moving abroad. I have, I think, 2 or 3 articles from females living abroad on my blog. One female veteran who lives in Mexico, another female veteran who lives in Thailand, and seeing their kind of journeys to me has been really inspiring, because I think it takes a little more guts to move abroad as a female veteran. And there are countries that are maybe better or worse for female veterans, just like there are countries that are better or worse for families, or countries are better or worse for single veterans or black veterans or whatever. So those are the kind of conversations that I want to have to veterans, that kind of like help them in that kind of like moving abroad decision making process.
I think the biggest thing is, just like anything else, the risks and safety side of
Hmm.
things, and just how do you manage that. So for you, what was the risk things that you maybe considered not doing it?
Yeah, so the unknown, I think, is always a little scary, especially if you go somewhere where you might not speak the language, you're not sure about the
Yeah.
culture and things like that. And how I kind of compare violence in the United States to violence abroad is, one of the issues we have in our country at the current moment, especially, is violence in the United States is incredibly random and chaotic. Like, you kind of don't know what might happen where, from churches to schools to whatever.
Yeah.
And
The place
abroad,
you think
I
should
am
be safe or not. And
right. I mean, it's not a pretty sight all the time. But one of the
oh, I'm not hearing you.
Wait, so
Sorry about that, folks. I had no audio. Sorry.
okay. Can you hear me now?
I can now.
Okay, perfect. So I will reiterate those kind of points is that for safety inside the United States can be incredibly chaotic and random. Outside the
Yeah.
United States, it kind of makes a little more sense if you think about it. And you do have to do things like don't go abroad and wear fancy jewelry or be walking around with a fancy iPhone in bad areas. I mean, that's kind of not very
Don't
intelligent.
look like, hey, I'm a tourist.
Yeah,
Blend in,
don't
right?
try and do your best to, be in the right places at the right time in the right uniform. I think the veterans that get themselves in trouble abroad is usually doing things that you should not do anywhere in the world, oftentimes.
Yeah.
I mean, things like cocaine and hookers are not a good idea no matter where you're at in the world.
Don't get
But if you
drunk
go
and
certain places,
stupid and not have a
don't do that.
plan. Don't
Exactly.
go and not have a buddy that's going to.
Hmm.
Oh, I was even listening to a podcast the other day. It was a crime podcast, but the guy went to Miami with his girlfriend and she loves, living this high life. And he got kicked out of the club for whatever reason. And then they kidnapped her and she disappeared. And, you know,
Wow.
yeah,
I mean,
just
yeah, I mean, there's danger everywhere in the world. I think that veterans are more suited to deal with those types of dangers and risks than your everyday person. But moving abroad, of course, has like certain risks, certain areas. There are places that can be a little more dangerous. Asia is generally very safe. That's why you'll see a lot of like female veterans in places like Thailand. Costa Rica is safer than most places in Latin America. So there are some considerations like that to go into, especially as a family. So I talk to families a lot about like international schools because
yeah.
I've taught in Thailand, I've taught in Cambodia, I've worked in educational environments in Africa. So I'm pretty well versed on international education, and I can say with 100% confidence that most private international education is far superior than American public education. So we all know American public
Well,
education
the
in some
test
places is
results
not
even show
ideal.
that our numbers are lacking. They're
Yeah.
slacking. I know there's quite a big population of Americans growing in Spain, for instance.
Hmm.
The culture is really good. It tends to be a little bit more socialist, but
Yep.
politically, anyways. But the environment was so clean. And I know a lot of veterans, when they travel abroad, because they're eating better foods that are
That's a huge
not
thing.
filled with a lot of the chemicals and it's not all the extra pesticides and stuff like that. I had no issues. My normal pains of eating food here I did not experience in Spain.
Hmm. And southern Spain actually does have a lot of veterans there because they have a pretty attractive retirement visa. And like you mentioned, I think the food
Rhoda
abroad,
doesn't. There are some
yeah, I think the
military
food abroad
bases
is
in Spain.
definitely hugely worth mentioning because I have talked to so many veterans who move abroad and they're eating more and yet they're losing weight. They're
Yeah.
eating healthier food, they're feeling better. Some of their chronic illnesses might have diminished a little bit, especially when it comes to like stomach or skin issues. Like I really tell people that, I feel like I'm kind of aging backwards moving abroad, and I feel like I'm aging at triple the rate in the United States of America with all the stress and like you mentioned, I mean, there's like real health concerns in the United States when it comes to the food we eat. I mean, there's no
Yeah.
denying that a lot of the chemicals that like I remember going to I like Fruit Loops. I like, I've always since I was a kid, I always like Fruit Loops. So I went
Right.
to the store in Dominican Republic and I bought some Fruit Loops, but the Fruit Loops there look a lot different. So they're actually like kind of more dull colored
Yeah.
because the chemicals that we use in the United States are illegal in the Dominican Republic because they cause cancer. So
Yeah,
I was
because
eating the
they
right.
use beet color for the
Yep.
red ones and not food color, color dye, whatever number 3 or whatever it
Yeah,
is.
so it's incredible kind of learning stuff like that. And then when you're
Yeah.
eating kind of even things like chicken that aren't just pumped full of steroids and
Yep.
chemicals and things like that and hormones,
Or washed
what that
with
does.
chlorine.
Yep, that too. And there's a reason why Americans have such high rates of cancer. It's
Yeah.
definitely, I think, in my opinion, it has a lot to do with our diets and environment, obviously. But another thing that, I think that is the real killer for a lot of people is stress. I mean, stress is such a killer for
Yeah.
people and for veterans that when you can find ways to eliminate stress from your day-to-day life and improve your life is going to get better. So I think for me, moving abroad was such a big reset where I kind of was going through a lot of problems. I moved abroad. It was like someone kind of hit the reset button on my life and it gave me a different perspective and it enabled me to kind of take my life off survival mode, let my guard down and kind of let other good things into my life, like, nature, like religion, like friendship, all those things, to where now I'm a much better and healthier person having lived and moved abroad than I think I would be if I would have stayed in Iowa.
Is that where you're from, is Iowa?
Yep, that's where I grew up. So I might have left there when I was
Okay.
like 18,
Yeah.
but yeah, where I grew up in Iowa, and it's cold there. So I had to tell my mom that I can't come back for Christmas anymore because it gets dark at like 5 p.m. It's very depressing, and that's another thing. Like the seasonal
Oh, yeah.
affective disorder or whatever they're called, that's definitely real. I mean,
Sad. It's
I
called
spent.
sad, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredibly real. I mean, when you're not experiencing sunshine, when it's cold outside, when it's the winter time, I'm just not happy. And so, for me, warm climates is definitely a better, happier life.
So does your mom go down there and visit you more then?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, she
Yeah.
loves visiting. I mean, she gets to, I kind of know everything there. Like I learned Spanish, so we go to the beach, and she sits down on the beach, she has a frozen drink, she gets a foot massage, looks at the ocean. I mean, she's just living the
It's
dream.
win-win.
So. Yeah, I mean, and a lot of times veterans will experience that because, um, you know, the how I started taking this very seriously, as to where I'm like, I'm gonna kind of dedicate my life to this and put a lot of effort into it, is because a guy who I deployed with, to Afghanistan, who actually got, he got hurt in Afghanistan pretty bad, came back and he was going through a divorce and struggling and he hit me up on Facebook and he said, "Hey, I see you're down in Dominican Republic, talk about it. I'd like can I come visit? I just lost my job and kind of struggling." And I was like, "Sure." So I rented him the apartment next to mine for 2 weeks for a couple $100. And he came down and we're sitting on the beach, we're drinking a beer, just kind of talking, having those conversations that only veterans that serve together can have. And he
Yeah.
casually mentioned that he had a gun in his mouth, 2 days ago. And then he saw,
Mhm.
my post of the beach of different stuff, whatever I was doing. And he wanted, he said, "I want to come down and check that out." So now this is years later. Now he's living full time in the Dominican Republic. He's, he went to school online and got a degree. He's lost weight. He even found a new wife and he's got a baby on the way by a
Aw.
Dominican girl. It's kind of like this cool story, but he kind of like was the one that kind of laid it out to me where he's like, this really did save my life. Like coming here, he was
Yeah.
living like in like Minnesota or something. He came down to the Dominican Republic. I took him scuba diving, I took him snorkeling, I took him to see the mountains, to the beaches, all that stuff. And he, kind of discovered a different form of therapy and he got connected there with a therapist and psychologist that really helped him and with nothing out of pocket because he's a 100% rated veteran. So kind of doing that made me realize that okay, maybe this goes beyond like the idea of, oh, I just want to drink nice cocktails on the beach,
Right,
and
right.
kind of like have that kind of life. To me it goes a little bit beyond that,
It's not
to
just
where
an
I want to see.
escape. It sounds like it's very
Yeah,
life changing. What an
yeah.
opportunity to have you you gave new life to somebody.
Right. And now I get those stories kind of all the time who are like, "Hey, I moved my family to Mexico. I'm living over here in Thailand. I'm doing this." So kind of hearing those stories from veterans has been really rewarding, and that's only through the power of like social media, because that has enabled me in a lot of ways to share my story, to share other veteran stories about moving and living outside the United States. So that's something at the time, I didn't really set out with the idea to be a social media influencer. I always wanted to be a writer. Like that was kind of my goal. My first book was for student veterans. I got to go speak to Congress about student veteran issues and things like that. But this has given me kind of newfound purpose and meaning. And I also discovered that a lot of people just don't read anymore. So me writing like
Oh
you're right.
no, I
Not
was at an event
unfortunately,
last
it's not
night.
not the world.
They read the abstract and they skip down to the discussion and maybe skim through the conclusion, and that's all you read, especially on formal research, papers. But I admit it. I mean, I'm working on my PhD. That's all I read. I mean, I don't
Well, yeah. Well,
I'm
working on a
not
PhD is a different
digesting the
story.
numbers.
But yeah, so a lot of people, so I do, I wrote a book that I really love about veteran affirmations, about how to use
Okay.
positive mental health affirmations for veterans. And I wrote my book for student veterans and things like that. But I did definitely discover that, veterans and people just don't read as much as they used to. So I
They
kind of
don't.
transformed it a little bit. And now I'm doing more of the social media stuff, which is fun too, and creative and everything. And it kind of directs people towards my blog and articles and things like that because for example, next month I'm going to write a pretty in-depth article about veterans living in Thailand and kind of lay out the healthcare options and veteran
I have
stories
an
and all this stuff.
idea. I have a friend of mine that is so he's a veteran, by the way, but
Okay,
he's in the film industry. We need to come and do a documentary down there.
that would be sweet. That would be super cool.
That would be cool. Yeah. I
It's
told
just
you
like
the
two
things
weeks
turn in
ago.
my head sometimes.
Yeah, that would, we were actually so like 2 weeks ago, me and like seven other veterans, we rented like a 10-bedroom mansion in the Dominican Republic for a couple weeks. And it was kind
Yeah.
of funny because we're like, this should be a reality show. So it's like 10 veterans in this big
Oh,
mansion,
for sure.
like we're
For
all swimming in
sure.
the pool, drinking, grilling out, all this stuff. So it's like this should probably be a reality show or like a documentary or something. So in the future, maybe we'll do something like that. I might like to because I think that
Oh
veterans living
no.
abroad and living these awesome lives is like kind of an inspiring, cool thing.
I
And
gotta pitch this to my friend,
yeah,
seriously. Because
I think that'd be
I
cool.
know a little bit about the film industry too. So
Yeah.
let's do a I have a one question though. If you had anything that you thought was this is one thing about living abroad that needs to change, what would that be?
Change like for I'm not sure I understand the
I don't
question.
know, something that you think is maybe a potential issue. I don't know if it's anything from voting to filing taxes to, if you had the
Well, it's
ability to
pretty
change
easy to
one
do. It's
thing.
pretty easy to do all that stuff remotely. I mean, like, it's very easy to kind of digitize your life. I've lived abroad now for I think like 7 years.
Okay.
So, I go back to the United States like once a year probably, or sometimes if there's sort like, say my grandmother dies. Okay, I went back for that last year, or things
Right.
like that. So moving abroad isn't necessarily as permanent as people think it is. It's not like a life or death, like, oh, I'll move abroad or whatever. You can always go and come back. I mean, you're not like renouncing your citizenship or doing anything like that.
Right.
If I was to tell veterans anything about moving and living abroad, is that you do need to be more financially disciplined and responsible in that arena than you do in the United States. I mean, you
And
don't
I
have
would think
the same.
having a backup plan, you always need to have some kind of a backup plan too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you do need to be kind of what I'll call like hyper independent. Is you do need to realize that, especially if you move abroad by yourself, I mean, you're the only one that's gonna fully like look out for you. So you don't really
Right.
have those support structures or friends or family or things like that that you had back in the United States. So one of the cool things about relationships abroad compared to the United States is our relationships in the United States are often inherited. I mean, it's our family, it's our community, it's the people we work with, go to school with. Those are relationships that we have. Abroad, you really get to determine your relationships. You really get to pick your friends. You really get to engage in stuff that you want to engage in. So for me, like I like martial arts, I like scuba diving. Obviously I'm a veteran, so those are the kind of avenues that I take to like meet friends and stuff like that. And then I think it's just one of those things where you think it's going to be scary and you get there and it's not. I think that's probably the best way I can do it. But that's also why we have our events. Like our next big one is we're having a big Veterans Day event in Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic with the American Legion there. We're going to have veteran performers. We're going to have veteran events, veteran vendors. There's going to be like 1,000 veterans there in Punta Cana in the Dominican
Wow.
Republic at this big beach day. And we're going to have everyone from like real estate there, community people there. We're going to donate money to a charity. We're all going to have some beers on the beach. So that's one reason why we have those events. It's kind of like to bring veterans in and put them in the same room so people can make those connections and friendships and help each other
Right.
out, and kind of be kind of PCS to a new community. And that's one reason why I also talk about like good communities for veterans. Like, what's a good place to go if you're a veteran? Because you might not
Right.
know where like the VFW is, the American Legion is, or where big populations of expats are. Or you might be one of those guys or girls that doesn't want to live around other veterans. You don't want to
Yeah.
be around expats. You want to go live in a local community somewhere. And another thing that I think is important to point out is a lot of veterans are first and second generation immigrants to the United States. I mean, there's so many veterans that obviously come to the United States from Spanish-speaking countries, join the military, do their time, and then move back to that country, with their military benefits and really kind of live like kings and queens because they were
Yeah.
going back to, what they knew. So there's a lot of those types of stories as well, for the veteran community. And I think that I just want to be able to try and tell some of them to the people in the United States, and also to give veterans hope that this is possible.
Is there anything that I could have, should have asked, but didn't? And oops, no, didn't ready to put that up yet. Anything I should have asked, but I didn't ask?
No, I'd like to tell all veterans, if you're interested in moving abroad, for me, it has been a rewarding, positive, and healthy experience. That's one reason why I started doing what I do. That's why I wrote my book. If you are interested in the free ebook for veterans moving abroad, just hit me up on social media, and I'll be, happy to send it to you and answer whatever questions you have. Um,
I
and
dropped the
I think that
Amazon link already over
okay,
there, so I don't know if
yeah,
it
and
put
that's
the ebook
so.
version in there, but
Yeah, so the ebook, if you hit me up, I'll send it to you. Obviously, I can't give the physical copy away for free because Jeff Bezos needs his cut of the whole deal. So, but if you want the physical copy, that's on Amazon along with my other books. And I have a ton of information and articles on my blog. And I also do like a monthly newsletter where I send out information for veterans abroad regarding things like healthcare because a lot of veterans just don't know. I mean,
yeah.
you can go get your healthcare in Thailand. There is an addiction center in Thailand that treats veterans with nothing out of pocket at a 5-star resort.
Wow.
You don't know that those exist because nobody's told you about them.
Right. It's best kept secrets. Thank you so much for joining us. I did drop your link tree in the chat as well. So,
Cool.
John, safe travels. Thank you for coming on. I think I had somebody respond when they saw us posting, oh, I need to have him on my podcast too. So don't be surprised if you get some more invites. But thank you so much for joining us, and be safe out there.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Eva. Have a good day.
You too. All right, folks, thank you so much. Next week, I am going to be boots on the ground with my dear friend, Lisa Bass. We were stationed together at Fort Hood. We are going to be at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, with the Valkyrie Project. And I'm super excited to interview them because that on the 20th, my birthday, that Friday, we're attending a military women's conference there on Fort Bragg. And then the following week, March 28th, Paula Yost, Dr. Paula Yost, she's an author. She is going to talk to us about how to advocate for your children when they go to medical appointments and stuff like that. My daughter has given me permission to discuss some of her issues that she's had, and that I am booking guests for April on. So feel free to reach out to me. You can email me, Eva at MB Radio, if I can type it in here. Send me an email and we'll get you scheduled. I know I have some people I need to respond to and get things scheduled. So anyways, thank you all for joining Military Broadcast Radio and the From Pain to Purpose radio show, giving veterans a voice. And y'all have a very blessed week. Bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to Military Broadcast Radio. As we wrap up today's show, we want to remind you that the podcast of today's episode will be available right after we go off the air. So if you missed any part of the show or want to listen again, be sure to check it out. And remember, we're here to support and honor our veterans. Your stories and experiences matter, and we are committed to giving you a platform to share them. That's right. We're here to give our veterans a voice. So don't forget to catch the podcast and stay connected with us. Giving our veterans a voice.